All right, so our next section is just working with functions and different operations like adding, subtracting, multiplying, a little dividing, not much with the dividing, and then composition functions. So in our first function on problem 43, we've got our f of x and our g of x. In the first situation, we will multiply them. And the goal is just to simplify this. So for instance, if I just take the 15 and multiply it with the -5, we're going to get -75. And then when I combine all my x's, I have x to the fourth, which this is very similar, if not exactly like, a neighbors meets neighbors problem. On b, I'm going to take f of x and divide it by g of x. And if you think about it, this 15 over -5 is just a -3. And then if you think about that, the fact that there's 3 x's on top and 1 x on the bottom, that 1 x can cancel out the other one, so we're left with x squared. So C is the newer thing that we looked at this semester. We have f of g of x, which simply means that g's function will go into f's function. So all of this is going to go right where the x is. So I still have the 15, but instead of x being cubed, I have -5x that's being cubed, which technically just means there's 3 of these -5x's. And if I just go and try to clean that up, then I get, let's see, I'm going to have to move into the next box, and -1,875 if I multiply the 15 with the -5's, x to the third. So the idea here is just no parentheses when we're done. You simplify it as much as you possibly can. All right, on 44, we've got a function f of x, and this time I'm going to give you a value. In both situations, the number's not in parentheses, so that's y. So I'll have 48 equals 4x plus 8. And then on the other one, it would just be 30 equals 4x plus 8. One type of x for solving, so I just need to get x alone. So in the first such situation, subtract 8 and divide by 10. Or I'm sorry, divide by 4, so I get 10 as my answer. And the next situation, subtract the 8 and then divide by 4. And so here I get a fraction, which I could simplify the fraction, or I could divide it out into a decimal. All right, so 5.5, my decimal didn't show up very well. On the next situation, we will be subtracting. So remember, my suggestion when you subtract the two functions is to turn it into addition. So here goes my f of x. And then instead of subtracting g of x, I'm going to add it. So when I change that subtraction to an addition sign, this -5x squared becomes a positive 5x squared, which I'm going to stack with its like term. This subtracting 4x becomes an adding 4x, so positive 4x. And then this positive 8 becomes a -8. And then I can just add these up. And that is my response for A. And then in the other one, I'm just going to switch them around. So I'm going to take g of x and subtract f of x. So g of x does not get touched. But when I'm ready to change the subtraction into addition, then I'm going to change everything about f of x. So the positive 3x squared becomes a -3x squared. Let's see, what do we got? The -5x becomes a positive 5x, and I'm just stacking my like terms. And the -7 becomes a positive 7. And now if I add them up, you're going to notice that your answers are actually quite similar, except they are opposite versions of each other. So what's positive is negative, and what's negative is positive. All right, on 16, we are multiplying. Multiplying is always neighbors meets the neighbors. So just go slow and take your time. So I get 6 with x cubed, and then I get a positive 2x squared. And then when -7 goes to meet everybody, I get a -21 x squared. So I'm going to stack my like term. And then finally I get a -7x, which doesn't have anything to pair with it. So when I'm done, my final answer is going to be 6x cubed minus 19x squared minus 7x. So b is another composition function. This says that g is going into f. So that means all of g is going into f twice. All right, so we're going to have 2, instead of x being squared, it'll be 3x plus 1 squared, minus 7, and instead of x, it'll be 3x plus 1. And so here, this is going to be a little bit of work. Let's see, how far over? I'm going to move over far and just show you how this sets up. So first, dealing with that squared. And now I'm going to deal with parentheses. Probably the easiest parentheses to deal with is this minus 7. So I get subtracting 21x, subtracting 7. And then in the other side, I have 3 neighbors. So what I'm going to do is have my neighbors that are similar meet first. So I get a 9x squared, a 3x, another 3x, and a positive 1. Let's move this up. So now we're going to have 9x squared plus 6x plus 1. I don't want to forget about the 2. So 2 still needs to meet everybody. So I'm going to get an 18x squared plus 12x plus 2. And then I'm going to remember that the original half where I'm subtracting 12x. So I'll stack it. And subtracting 7, so I'll stack it. So my final answer for 46C is going to be this, 18x squared minus 19x minus 5. So let's write that here. All right, C. C is actually missing a parentheses. I see this now. But it just says we should start with f's function and put a 1 into it. So I'm just going to go up here to f's function, and wherever there's an x, I'm going to put a 1 in. If I clean this up, I would first square the 1, which is 1, and 1 times 2 is 2, and then I'd multiply my 7 and 1. And so when I'm done with all of this, I get a negative 5. And so f of 1 is worth negative 5. So if I get rid of f of 1 and replace what it's worth, now this says go to g's function and put in negative 5. So here goes g's function. Here it is. Putting in negative 5. I'm going to multiply first for negative 15, and then I'm going to add 1. So when I'm done for this problem, I get a negative 14. So writing it right here. Here's my final answer. All right, just practice, practice, more practice. So this one says another composition that G is going to go into F. So all of this is going right here. So we'll still have the 2, but instead of 2 multiplying x, it's going to multiply this. And then again, no parentheses, so I'm just going to distribute neighbors meets neighbors. So I get 2x squared minus 6x minus 1, and then that's it. I can't simplify that anymore. So when I do the next one, make those outer parentheses, I'm going to go to g's function, and wherever there's an x, I'm going to put a 2. 2 squared is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, subtract those and I get a negative 2. So g of 2 is worth negative 2, so that means I can just replace it with negative 2, and now I'm going to go to f's function, and where there's the x, I'm going to put in the negative 2. So I'm going to multiply first for negative 1. Negative 1 take away from 1 is negative 5. So my final answer for B is that negative 5. All right, where are we here? Let's see if we can get this all done in the video. So this is just a reminder about working with eyes. Before I get there, I want to remind you of this little wheel. You are provided this wheel, I don't know what you call it, on your toolkit when we take the final. So this is just a reminder that I squared is worth negative 1 and I to the 4th is 1. I is just worth I, but I cubed is worth a negative I. All right, so, oh, and then finally, remember, I squared is worth -1 is the big one of all of those things. All right, so let's move that down. The square root of 36 I can do, that's 6. But since I took the square root of a negative number, I put an I. 98 does not have a nice square root, so I would run it through my factor program. I can break it into this. So the square root of 49 is a 7. I do have an I with the square root of 2. And then the same happens with 12. It does not have a nice square root, but I can break it into 4 and 3. So that becomes 2 with an I, square root of 3. 50. So on 50, we're going to realize that that's 3 times -1, because that's what I squared is worth. And then from here, I get -3. And then, let's see, 7 with, it's supposed to be a lowercase I to the 4th is worth 1, so that's 7. And then I'll bring down the subtraction, and so when I'm done, I get a -10. And then on the next one, I'm going to have -2, and I'm going to count my way to I to the 4th. So I'm going to have, let's see, I to the 1st, I to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So I to the 7th is just actually a -I. It does not get to become a real number, but now this is positive 2I. And then I to the 12th. Let's clear these out. Okay, so if I go I12, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, the 4 got cut off, but 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I to the 12th is worth a positive 1. So then I'll have plus 8 times a positive 1, which just is 8. And I forgot my I here. I am catching that mistake. And then I cannot add these because one's imaginary and one's real. So big thing here is if your I exponent is even, you'll get 1 or -1. If it's I, you'll still have some version of I. All right, next part, we're going to simplify the quadratic formula. So 12 is not perfect, but we already broke that down. So this can become, let's see, so we're going to have 6, and then the square root of 4 is 2, with the square root of 3, I forgot my minus, all over 2. And then that can become plus or minus 12 with the square root of 3, because I just multiplied the 6 and the 2 to make the 12. And then I'm going to do my triangle and divide all of those by 2. And not put my denominator of 1. The next one has an imaginary number, but I can't do anything with 7. So I'm just going to do this, because no i's or no negative numbers in there. And then the triangle does not work here. There's nothing I can divide, so that's it there. All right, next two. 53 is very similar to the capstone. 54, you could do something similar as the capstone as well. So real quick, which of the following mathematical terms would represent the answer for the following questions? James is throwing a ball from the outfield all the way to home plate. If the ball moves in a quadratic movement, it's represented by this equation. So how long will it take the ball to reach the maximum height? Maximum height. So we're looking here. So if I were just to use my graphing calculator, I could go to the y equals button. So what I've done here is I've entered the equation into the y equals button, and then I've hit zoom 6, so I've got a graph. And I know this is an upside down U shape, so I just need to go a little higher up. I'm going to press the window button and just move this, my Y max, up to like, I don't know, 60. And very close, I'm just going to adjust it one more time, maybe to 100. All right, and then if you just use this trace button, we're just trying to see which answer, is the closest. So hold on. All right, so I just used the trace button and I got close to the top, and I have to choose between 2 seconds and 3 seconds. So if I just kind of move back and forth, this is probably 2 seconds. And there is my answer. The other option is I could complete the square, but I'm just going to use my graphing calculator. And then that's probably it. I'm going to let you do 54 on your own because my video time is running out.